In today's real estate exam prep video, we're going to continue our vocabulary word series, and we're starting right now. Hey everyone, my name is Vojchehoske, and welcome to the Real Estate Classroom YouTube channel, where our mission is simple, and that's simply to help you pass your real estate exam the first time. And knowing your vocabulary words go a long way towards you achieving that goal. In today's video, we're going to discuss vocabulary words 49 through 54 of 300, and every word discussed today evolves around personal property. Personal property, important thing to know. So let's start with number 49, personal property. Now, understand that personal property can also be referred to as, or also known as, a chattel or personalty. Not personality, but personalty. Now, the difference between personal property and real property is personal property is movable. Real property is fixed to the land. So let me give you an example. You have the house on a piece of land. That house is real property because it's permanently affixed to that land. Let's say that you have cabinets that have been bolted into the wall of that house. That is real property because it's permanently affixed to that improvement. Personal property would be things like the living room set or the kitchen table, things that you can move very easily. They're not permanently affixed whatsoever to the real property. Number 50 is Fructus Naturales. In fact, I debated whether to even include this in here until I had a student say that they had this particular term on one of their exams. So Fructus Naturales, say that 3 times really fast, is what we call the fruits of nature that grow continuously on the land. They don't need cultivation. They aren't, harvested annually. Things like trees, shrubs, grasses, flowers, those type of things. They are considered part of the real property. Number 51 is Fructus Industriales. Fructus Industriales. Now, most of the time, it's known as Emblements. In fact, most of the time, your test question is going to refer to it as Emblements. However, you have to know that they can refer to it as Fructus Industriales. So these are things of an annual nature, annual crops such as corn or wheat or soybean or vegetables or apples and oranges that are on trees in an orchard. They are considered personal property. So let me break this down for you. Let's say that you own a farm and you put in the corn. You plant your corn in May. Now that corn isn't going to be ready to be harvested till September or October. So in July, as the crops are growing, you sell the farm. What's going to happen is the new owner is going to take over possession and ownership of that farm in July. However, they have to allow you to go in and harvest the crop because the crop is considered personal property. Number 52 is a fixture. What is a fixture? Well, a fixture is personal property that is permanently attached to the real property. And once that fixture is attached to the real property, it becomes part of that real property. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you rent out a single family home. And let's say that the tenant, without your knowledge, the tenant hates the cabinets that are in the kitchen, so they rip those cabinets out and they put their cabinets in. Now, those cabinets were personal property, or those cabinets started out as personal property, but once that tenant bolted those cabinets to the wall, then those cabinets became part of the real property, and guess what? They also became property of the landlord. The tenant cannot remove them once they are fixed permanently to that wall in the kitchen. That is a fixture. Fixture is personal property that becomes real property once it's affixed to the real property. Number 53 is a trade fixture. A trade fixture is personal property that is permanently affixed to the real property. However, it still belongs to the tenant, and once tenancy ends, the tenant can remove it. So let me give you an example in this. So let's say that a tenant rents out a commercial bay for a restaurant. Now, as part of that restaurant or part of the trade or conducting business, the tenant needs to permanently affix or bolt the maybe bolt the stove to the floor, bolt the refrigerator to the wall, those type of things. Now, because it's a trade fixture, once tenancy ends and that tenant moves out, the tenant is able legally to remove that personal property, even though it's a fixed, because it's part of their trade or business. All right, number 54 is a leasehold improvement. So what is a leasehold improvement? Well, typically we see this in commercial office type real estate, not in your run-of-the-mill residential. And a leasehold improvement is anything that benefits that individual lessee. Typically what we see is like, for example, maybe they're the tenant build out. So this tenant is going to open up a restaurant in this commercial bay. And of course, they need a certain layout. So they're going to have to move walls, change the floors. They're going to have certain equipment that's installed in the kitchen, maybe shelves, maybe cabinets, certain types of lighting, certain types of Gaylord systems for fire suppressant. All of those are considered individual to that tenant need, and it's called a leasehold improvement. So the landlord and the tenant, they're going to negotiate in the lease who pays for the leasehold improvement, and also it'll determine whose property does that belong to, the tenant or the landlord. So if you're going to continue studying vocabulary words, check out this video right here. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Click the little circle to my left. Comments and questions down below. Love those. I'll see y'all in the next video.